In our case, the domain is going to be the interval of possible quantities. Easiest way to think about the domain is what is the smallest and largest possible input value you can have. For our situation, and typically in this case, because we can have quantities, they have to be whole numbers, we typically would list a bracket to list a sequence of whole numbers as possibilities for the domain. So we know that we're only talking about 100 plus shirts. So that would be 100, 101, 102. Now I don't want to list them all out because I'm going to say, you know what, I think it's reasonable for somebody to buy up to 500 shirts. This is where you and I may disagree. You might say, well, if it's a big distributor, they may purchase thousands of shirts. And I agree. I think you can definitely justify that. We know for a fact that we're only talking about 100 plus, and I'm just going to say I'm going all the way up to 500. Sometimes, so this works for integer values to use these brackets. So anytime you have integers, you can use the brackets and list out the first sequence of few values, and then just do dot, 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 comma, the last value. Q represents the quantity. So I know that my quantity is at least 100. So it's greater than or equal to 100. And my quantity has to be less than or equal to 500. This is just by the way I set it up. And if I'm the company, I probably don't want to discount shirts forever and ever and ever. Maybe this is only going to work until a company buys up to 500 shirts. Okay, so this is kind of a pain in the butt to write because I have to list out the Q and the Q. It's also true that 100 is less than or equal to Q. And I'll let you think about why that's true. So I can, as long as if I flip the two values, I have to flip the inequality, because if my quantity is greater than or equal to 100, then my 100 is the smallest possible quantity I can have. And Q is less than or equal to 500. Now the reason I did this is because I can actually put these two statements together, and mathematicians have decided that rather than to write it out with all this notation, I can just say 100 is less than or equal to quantity, and quantity is less than or equal to 500. So I can also write my domain this way. Both of these are valid. I think in this case this one's the best since we're only dealing with integer values. This one kind of says that any number between 1 and 500 works, and we know that, like for example, 100.7 is not a reasonable number of shirts to buy. So this is more for a continuous scale. This is more for integers and integer values. But I just wanted to show you both just in case you run into different circumstances where one is more valid than the other. Okay, now the range pertains to the output values. So it's the same thing as a domain, except it deals with the potential output values. So in this case I'm dealing with intervals, an interval for price. Well, the beauty of this is that it depends on the quantity. So my quantity can range from 100 all the way up to 500. I already know that if I purchase 100 shirts, the price is going to be $6 per shirt. If I purchase 500, well, I'm going to need to calculate this because I don't know right off the top of my head, but I can say the price as a function of getting 500 shirts, and now I can calculate it. The way I do that is by taking 6 minus 1 cent discount, 500 minus 100 times, because I only get discount for anything above 100. So I'll get the 1 cent discount 400 times. And if I come over to my handy dandy calculator, I can just enter in 6 minus 0.01 parenthesis 500 minus 100, or you could just turn that into 400. It would still calculate the same way. I enter and I get equals 2. So this means the price as a function of purchasing 500 shirts is $2. Beautiful. So I've just summarized what I've calculated right there, and now I can say in a similar fashion that my price will be the series of numbers between, I'll do my less than or equal to, less than or equal to, the minimum price it appears that I can pay for a shirt is $2, is less than the price, but the price is less than or equal to $6 as long as I'm purchasing more than 100 shirts. So that's how we would list out our range.